Hello, everyone. It's January 29th and time for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis here at the Cardinal Nation in video form. And you can also listen to the audio at the Scoops Sports Network and your famous podcast apps. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. I'm really excited about another edition.
Yeah, I am too. I'm excited about the fact I'm not in St. Louis where it was 5 below wind chill last weekend anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm excited that it's in St. Louis and it's like 50 degrees today.
So
It's a
see there, my
yeah,
timing was bad.
yeah, bad timing for winter warm up.
Well, so what we're going to do today is cover a number of miscellaneous topics, things that have come up in the last week covering the Cardinals and the Miners. On one hand, it's kind of a quiet time. We're all waiting for the inevitable Nolan Arenado trade that may or may not happen. But there are players down here in Florida, and so we'll kind of later in the talk about what I've been seeing down here in the early camp development camp down in Jupiter. But first, we'll start out. The Cardinals made an announcement on Tuesday. They made a minor league signing, a veteran minor league guy, Yohel Pozo, a catcher, first baseman. What do you know about this guy, and where do you think he's going to fit in?
I'm not even going to pretend. Up until the signing, I knew nothing about him, nothing at all. The name didn't sound familiar. And Brian, you know that from just like with you watch four minor league games a night. For a name to not have any resonance is rare. And I thought, all right, so I better spend a little time getting to know this gentleman. The first thing that stuck out to me is in 2023 he was a chunky boy, and I really like that. I like players who have a little bit of extra weight on them who
Now,
play.
Let's be careful here. Now, this is not prospects after dark, so
Sorry.
let's keep it above the belt.
Beyond that, one of the things that I noticed was he actually has some similar swing mechanics, albeit from the right-handed side, to Jimmy Crooks in a weird way. They're not like a mirror exactly. They don't mirror each other, but there is a swing path there that's somewhat similar. When you look at the stats, you see a guy who has hit for some power. He's kind of like this year's version in some ways of Jared Young or Alfonso Rivas. Like those were my impressions. I think that the Cardinals have a lot of older catchers that are kind of ticketed for AAA, but we also know that that can change real quick. They're not committed to any of them.
No, but they got Chance Cisco, who has major league experience. They got Collins. And you mentioned Jimmy Crooks. He's likely to presume starter at Memphis. Now, granted, first base is a little weak. Chandler Redmond, of course, may be around. Yadier, who's going to be in major league camp. And then, depending on whatever happens with Luke and Baker. So that's kind of the first base catcher situation. It doesn't look particularly thin unless they're thinking about him maybe more as a first base type.
Yeah, it seems like that would be where he would get most of his reps. You know how it is. You go to spring training, you can never have enough people with catching experience. If you want to go super deep and maybe look way too much into things, you do have a catcher who's played a little bit of first. It's not the worst thing to surround Wilson Contreras with other catchers who have played a little bit of first. Not like some AAA career minor leaguer is going to give Wilson Contreras a bunch of pointers, but there might be some bouncing off that you can do there. But yeah, I think what I see at first is I was really excited about Jimmy Crooks finding his way to Memphis, seeing what a full season, but I'm also not against them taking it kind of slow with him, especially with Herrera and Pages getting a chance at the major leagues all year, hopefully, to see exactly what that looks like. So if it slows that down just a little bit, even if it's just a couple months, I don't have a problem with that. I know that it's very rare that a minor league depth move is ever a bad move until it starts limiting opportunities.
Right. And let's face it, there aren't a lot of first base types, especially who are pushing the majors. Like the catching position, of course, extremely strong, but it's also one that's very prone to injury. And I don't think the Cardinals want to flip Contreras back to catching at a moment's notice. He told us in St. Louis he was going to have his gear with him, but I think they're hoping that the duo of the young guys, Herrera and Pages, will get the whole year and it'll kind of sort out what the pecking order is going to be before Crooks enters the picture and maybe Burnell behind him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right on. We've seen them bring out a lot of catchers older and then just kind of cut what they needed to cut when it was time to cut, even exiting spring training.
All right, so let's switch gears now and talk about prospect lists. You and I both spent some time doing prospect lists over the years, and it's the kind of thing as we've talked about. there's no right or wrong. There's different points of view. There's different opinions. And I'm all for trying to understand what others did and why they rank players the way they do. And so the national guys are coming out with their rankings. Of course, they always start with the top 100, which covers all the systems. And the Cardinals, in the last week or so, Baseball America, MLB Pipeline, and Keith Law at The Athletic have all come out with their top 100s. And very consistent. JJ Weatherholt's in the top 30-ish, 32-ish of all three of those. Not a big surprise. BA and Pipeline both had Mathews ahead of Tink Hence. Quinn Mathews by a fair amount, 27, 28, 30 points of ranking difference, basically 40 versus about 70. However, Keith Law from The Athletic flipped them and still has Hence higher than Mathews at 39 versus 55. As you look at those two pitchers, Kyle, how do you sort out who has the highest ceiling, who is the best prospect between those two?
It's a fun conversation, right? And I think both you and I, like you said, we've made a many prospect list over the years. And when we do the list, a lot of times, prospect one, prospect two, prospect three, there is not a whole lot of difference. You're really just pulling straws, doing the favoritism. You outline that well. For me, I think it's really easy to see Tink Hence and see how successful he's been when he's been healthy, and also see that his body's getting bigger. He's filling out with the prospect pedigree. And to think, all right, if you're really talking about a prospect who has reshaped his slider, has a fastball changeup curve offering that are all average-ish and with more to grow on while having success and pitching with some of his, maybe not his best stuff and having success, like it would make a lot of sense to go Tink Hence there because he's nothing but something to dream on. Quinn Mathews is the opposite in some ways. He's made himself into something special, but he will always be the pitchability lefty. Even though his stuff has gotten better, even though his worst offering is about average at this point.
The worst of four, by the way.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I think it's just a matter of like one being a little bit younger, the other one being a little bit older. And now with college being as competitive as it is, as advanced as it is, even for a Stanford lefty, I think you make an assumption these days that those college arms are probably, especially the advanced ones who have developed velocity, are about AA caliber. So when they're having success at AA, it's not as like stark as it was years ago. And then to see Matthew, if you're invested in the stats, to see Matthew struggle at AAA, to have a little bit of a movement downgrade after some starts at AAA, which he attributes and many attribute to the ball.
Well, in all fairness, Kyle, also, the man had thrown 140 innings at that point. Now, Tink Hence is struggling to reach 80. Yeah. And so, back to your earlier comment, yeah, I've dreamed on Tink Hence for 5 years. I've dreamed for 5 years. And at some point in time, something's got to change. I don't know what it is, but something's got to change. The guy still hasn't pitched an inning at AAA.
Yeah. It's amazing, and he seems, for years now, it seems like he's on the cusp of the majors, even though they've taken him, they've been really deliberate and real careful with him. It's, I'm with you. Like for me personally, if I were putting my list out there, I would have Mathews ahead of Hence. We won't get into it. I would also have Jerpy ahead of Hence, but that's nothing against Hence. It's just to say that these are some elite arms with some elite talent, and health matters to me. So that's part of why Mathews goes ahead of Hence on my list.
Now, Jordan Hicks, of course, was a guy who had tremendous potential as well. And the Cardinals were tempted by this opportunity to bring him to the major leagues. They did that. And I don't know, in hindsight, it'd be interesting if they would be honest enough to say, hey, if you had it to do over, would you have done it the same way?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. I would love to know. And then, as you say that, then I start thinking, man, I've been a big proponent of opportunities in spring training. Like, I would love to get to Koa Roby to get a chance to pitch out of the pen. Graceffo, like, I know it's, again, health and aggressive, but then you say that, and I'm like, oh, wait, I've been one of these critical people that said, I really wish Jordan Hicks would have got a chance to start. So I'm glad you said it, because it's allowing me a second to do some introspective and pull the reins back a little bit.
And again, what it says is, without the ability to predict the future, this is all gut calls, right?
Yeah, jackpot. That's a great way of saying it, Brian.
So another piece of news the last couple of days, Dylan Carlson of course, who was a number one prospect and the Cardinals had great hopes for the switch hitting outfielder, signed with the Baltimore Orioles for just under $1 million, can reach $1 million with incentives. What do you think the future is for Dylan Carlson?
Brian, I root for that kid. Man, it's hard not to root for all of these kids that you watch play. Um, I would suspect that if he's used in a platoon role in a corner outfield, swinging the bat right-handed more than left, that he could be a valuable depth piece, fourth outfielder. Again, a matchup right-handed bat. Maybe get some time in center, especially for a team like the Orioles, a younger team with a lot of young talent that he can just kind of fade into the background of. That's not to say that he doesn't have the personality for success or anything like that. Like, it's just this is a really good spot for him and a really good role for him.
Should he continue to hit, or I mean, switch hit, or should he just, in fact, stay to his strong side?
It's funny. The Orioles are one of those forward-thinking teams, and I thought for sure the Rays would do this, but I would not be surprised if we're at the point with Dylan Carlson where even his agent or family are telling him, "All right, it's just right-handed from now on. That's your best bet." And I do hope that he does that. It just seems like his foundation. Brian, I remember watching him at Double A, and I remember watching him go up against like Mackenzie Gore, a tough throwing lefty, and he was into his lower body. And somewhere along the lines, I'm not sure when it happened into the majors or if it happened when he had a couple lower body injuries, but he was swinging all upper body. It was like his lower foundation left him, and especially swinging left-handed. So unless he can reestablish that, swinging right-handed and finding that lower half of his is going to be key for him. So I think it's a good place, a good role for him, and it gives him a chance to maybe start carving out a role as a fourth outfield, potentially a journeyman, which could pay dividends for him in the long run, swinging right-handed, like you said.
So, next topic on our agenda for this week on Wednesday with Walton and Reis is the winter ball. And of course, minor leaguers, some even major leaguers, get the opportunity to play in winter ball, earn a little money, play in a nice warm climate, get some more reps in. There have been a couple dozen, more than 2 dozen Cardinals having played in various leagues, and whether we're talking about Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Mexico, or Venezuela. And I've had a couple of reports for subscribers that have looked at the stats of the players heading into the playoffs. And every one of those 4 leagues have a different kind of playoffs, round robin, double elimination, different kinds to get one winner that represents that nation in the Caribbean Series, which will be held in Mexico next week. Dominican Republic is now done. But the manager of the year in the Puerto Rican winter, or in the Dominican Winter League, excuse me, Yadier Molina's team was eliminated, Aguilas Sabanas, and Albert Pujols' Escogido team was the one that actually won the championship. So here, of course, we have 2 ex-Cardinal stars, neither of whom have professional experience in a system coaching, but have now had success in winter ball. Of course, Molina as well pitched in World Baseball Classic several times. What do you think about these 2 guys as future managers? I have some opinions, but I'll let you go first.
Brian, I think a lot of times some of my worst baseball coaches were really good baseball players. And so that's always stuck with me. Your experiences guide you in life. So a lot of times, like you hear Jim Edmonds talk on television, and he knows hitting top to bottom. But then, I wonder sometimes how tough that would be to apply to people who aren't as naturally gifted or naturally talented as he is. But then you start thinking about what we've learned about the role of a major league manager, and it's more just about cultivating a clubhouse. It's about presenting a winning atmosphere, and
Dealing with the media and the public.
so I was going to refrain from that because I don't. But you're right. Nowadays, Oliver Marmol has to go out there every night, and then which does nothing for charity events and charity Q&As that you have to do, and then all the stuff you have to do in the off season. I mean, am I wrong? Yadier Molina wasn't even going to like winter warm up there at the end for a couple of years, which is nothing for his role at spring training.
Yadier Molina has never appeared to be comfortable in the spotlight in that way. And the X's and O's, to use a football analogy, the X's and O's of managing, I'm sure both these guys are more than capable, especially Yadi. No
Yeah.
doubt about it. But I'm not so sure about the people side of the job in Molina's case. Albert Albert can be very positive, very engaging, especially if you're talking with him about his charities. But there's another part to the Molina story that I want to talk about. A year ago at this time, there was a lot of rumblings. Another organization might want to hire Yadi. So the Cardinals got Yadi locked up. And he was going to be this special assistant. And the comments that John Mozeliak made were, hey, we want him to learn how the front office works. We want him to understand how decisions are made and how transactions occur. And what you want there is you want a manager who understands the bigger picture, even if he's not the one executing them. Because he could say, hey, get me 6 pitchers from Memphis tomorrow, not understanding that that's not something that was an extreme example.
Yeah.
But the point is, these guys, because they're such great stars, they have such name recognition. On one hand, there'll be fans who say, yeah, let's bring in Yadi, let him be the manager next week. But he hasn't managed young guys in the minor leagues. He hasn't, and I hate to say paid his dues because that's not fair. He paid his dues, 15 years or 17 years in the major leagues, but it's a different kind of job. And I go back to one of my childhood heroes, Bob Gibson, the greatest pitcher in Cardinals history, one of the best of all time. Bob Gibson became a pitching coach, and really it didn't mesh with him. About the only big star that I can think of that was a manager that did okay was Ted Williams. I mean, unless you go back to Rogers Hornsby or something. But, like you said, being able to do it and being able to teach it and encourage it and bring it out of others are two different characteristics.
Yeah, the communication aspect of it is really tough. We talk about the communication with the media and pardon me, and fans, but also with your team. Yadi, you don't have to look to very far for many of his former teammates to know that he was not exactly the easiest to talk to inside of the clubhouse either. So same goes with Albert. I do think all that we know and all that we've seen over the last year with Yadi is a pretty big precursor of maybe some alarm signals or bells that might come off. It's funny. Albert Pujols actually kind of reminds me of like Mark McGwire in some ways, and like I think about when McGwire right after the Cardinals named him the hitting coach, or right before they named him the hitting coach, and he sat down and talked about steroids and his usage. Now it's not the same thing with Albert, but for the first time
at the Hyatt at winter warm up.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. I didn't even think about that. That's exactly when that was, wasn't it?
Yes, as the late Joe Strauss called it, the riot at the Hyatt.
Yes.
He didn't even come in. He didn't even make it into the meeting room. He got cornered in a hallway. It was a crazy scene. Anyway, go ahead.
I love that. And then I think back to right before Albert Pujols came back to St. Louis. He sat down and he did like a 30-minute open, kind of like a question where he just sat down, an interview, and he talked about the contract negotiations with the Cardinals and that had like a similar feel, a similar dynamic. And I think in some ways they have a similar personality. I mean, I remember watching interviews with Mark McGwire when he was a player, and it's kind of similar to how Albert Pujols was. And a lot of those young players talk positively about Mark McGwire and how he taught hitting and how he embarked knowledge upon them and passed that knowledge down. And I do think hearing Albert talk, he does have that ability to be soft when you need to be soft and see the whole picture. I do think eventually he would have trouble with the media. I think that those guys, and they're so used to not having pushback that they would have to learn how to deal with a little bit of pushback and being questioned. But if I had to pick one of the two that I think would be a better manager than the other, with absolutely no disrespect to Yadi or Albert, for me, like, I could see Albert having a little bit more of the tender hand and carrot and stick, if you will, that maybe Yadi might be all stick.
You mentioned Mark McGwire, and we're going off track here, but it's fun to talk about. Tony La Russa wanted Mark McGwire back in baseball multiple years before McGwire came back. And he kept at him and kept at him. And I don't know this, Kyle. And everybody listening, I may be totally 180 degrees off, but I believe that Tony felt a responsibility to try to help rehabilitate Mark McGwire's persona with the public because of what had happened. And getting him back in the game was his way of trying to do that.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, especially everything we know about TLR.
But anyway, last subject is I'm down in Florida now. I'll be here for the next 2 months. on the backfields every day. It was great to be there yesterday, great to be there, well, Monday and Tuesday, and I'll be there pretty much every day. They've started a development camp. Depending on who you talk to, it's either called development camp or it could be called winter off-season program. But basically, there's about 3 dozen players that are in Jupiter now. And we'll talk about the players in a minute because it's interesting. But probably the most exciting and most interesting thing is to see the whole new staff, the whole player development staff. And we're talking about player development as well as performance. And they're all there. They're all on the field from Rob Cerfolio on down, the new farm director, Larry Day, Carl Koshin, the performance director, the new performance director on the performance side. So really all these guys, and they're in uniform, right? I mean, the farm director, Larry Day, is in, they're in shorts and workout with a fungo bat. And I'm thinking, wow, these guys are serious about teaching. But the old guys are there too. And so, of course, Jose Akendo now, who finally feels like he's got some help in instruction because he had to do a lot before. But 2 other guys that I've seen very, very prominently the first couple of days, more so than the past, are Jason Isringhausen with the pitchers and Ryan Ludwig with the outfielders. And I thought that was interesting that, they haven't totally cast away the old and gone with the new.
Does it feel, Brian, as you're watching it, does it feel collaborative? Is there try like kind of, if you could try to like break down
the whole first day was about people meeting people, and the coaches had meetings via Zoom, but I heard several times, "Hey, it's great to finally meet you in person." I mean, these guys, it's literally the first time they're all getting together, and so you've got all these people from different organizations and different ideas. And so the question that I've asked Rob Cerfolio twice now, and I'm going to keep asking him, is how are you going to measure success? How are you going to amalgamate all this knowledge and all this information and come up with a plan and a process and then figure out if you're on the right track or not? And, they don't have all the answers yet.
Yeah. I guess they're learning on the fly. You're meeting all these people, all these other coaches, all these other instructors at once, and you're also getting to know the players. So I guess it isn't, and you've had so many coaching turnovers rather. That's really fascinating. Has there been anything on the field that stuck out to you at all?
Well, all right. So at this point, no. The answer is no, not really. But I'll talk about some of the things I've seen. First of all, in terms of the makeup of the roster, it's interesting because there's a few major leaguers on all aspects. Michaelis, I watched Michaelis throw a pen yesterday. He had his dad and his 4 kids with him. Kind of cute. There, if you go to the Cardinal Nation, and even though the article's for subscribers, you can see a picture of young Miles Michaelis, age 6, throwing to dad Miles Michaelis, age 36. But Steven Matz is on the list. He's not there yet. But Michaelis threw, I don't know, he threw at least 80 pitches. So, I mean, he's throwing, full out. Wow. But then there's the young guys, Jerpy, Bedell, Rajic, Lynn, the 6'7" guy. Braden Davis, brand new guy. Showalter, who was injured last year. Dukanich, who is very, very interesting, the former Vanderbilt pitcher who was hurt last year. And Alec Willis is there giving it another try. So there's a wide variety of group, and several of them are throwing pins each day. The relievers are, more like about 30 pitches or so, but this is still very, very early. On the catching side, really the catchers are the guys that you would expect to see in Major League camp. So the Bernal and Crooks, but Pedro Pajes is there as well. And he's, of course, getting a lot of time. Of course, he caught Michaelis and several of the others. But the name that's there, the guy that I got to meet for the first time, Rainiel Rodriguez, who goes by Ray Rodriguez, who this time last year wasn't even signed yet. He was still an amateur. He didn't sign till April. And Rodriguez, of course, tore up the Dominican Summer League, and he's here in the U.S., and he is glued to the side of Leonardo Bernal. He is trying to learn everything he can from Bernal.
Oh, that's a good, pardon me. That's a good person to glue yourself to, especially as we learn more and more about Bernal and how he is like a sponge. Oh man, that's really fascinating. Do like in those circumstances, Brian? Do they start pairing up? Like I know you said that some of them throwing bullpens every day, but other than like Ray with Leo, are the pitchers pitching in groups? Is it something like that?
Well, really, it's a lot of stretching and throwing at this point. And the catchers are doing drills, as a group. I think there's like five catchers there, and they're doing drills with a machine, actually a pitching machine. And again, remember, we're 2 days into an early camp. Some of these guys will go home. I should mention that this camp that's going on now is 2 weeks. Then following that is step camp, spring training early program, and then that'll flow into minor league camp. And step camp starts, I think, the 11th of February, and that is again another group of minor leaguers who are guys that have been singled out, but also guys to be ready to be called over to the major league club when they need extra guys. Because the first spring training game for St. Louis is on the 22nd of February, about as early as I ever remember it. So this whole step camp going in parallel with big league camp is to provide opportunity for minor league guys to get some major league experience, for the major league guys to get some depth around them.
I have two more questions for you. One, Reynel Rodriguez. How is he built? Does he seem still built like a kid, or does he? Because the last I saw was, I believe, a picture from your website where he still seemed like a kid, but you could tell that he would be in a position to put on a little bit more muscle.
He's smaller than Bernal, considerably
Okay.
smaller. And I don't know if I posted it yesterday. I'll post it today. He's about half a head shorter than Bernal, and Bernal's not a huge guy, but Bernal's built like pies. They're both very stout. Crook's a little bit less or so, but yeah, he looks like an 18-year-old.
Wow. And then the other
Um,
question, I
well,
would say
go
the only
ahead.
other question I have for you, real quick, is everybody always wants to know about Miles Michaelis's facial hair situation. Does he have the mustache? Is it full on?
I didn't recognize him. His hair's short. His face is clean.
Whoa,
He's like down to business.
whoa! It's too much for me. Too
So
much.
somebody actually said to me, I looked at her and said, "Hey, is that Michaelis over there?" I said, "Yeah, his hair looks too short. It
Yeah,
doesn't look like him."
yeah.
Um,
I know it's ridiculous, but it's the things. It's those weird little things sometimes that I have to know.
yeah, exactly. A couple of guys with longer hair this year, actually. Lynn has longer hair, and who else was it that has? Oh, Juan Bin Cho. Juan Bin
Ha,
Cho kind of is growing it out too.
yeah. Chen Wei Lin and Wan Bin Cho rocking the coiffures. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. On the infield side, Contreras is on the list. Contreras and Winter on the list. I haven't seen him yet. Well, I saw Weatherholt. Weatherholt's definitely here, and taking balls at short. And on the outfield side, of course, Jordan Walker and Victor Scott have been down in Jupiter for a while. They've been doing a lot of work with Ludwig, tracking balls in the outfield. Of course, they're also hitting and agility stuff. But then Josh Baez is here. Koperniak is here. Nathan Church. Honeyman is supposed to be here. I haven't seen him yet, but so it's a very interesting, kind of a weird cross section of players. But these are guys that the Cardinals want to see, and again, it's exciting for me to get to meet all the new players. I kind of expected, normally these are informal, they're in shorts, and but I thought maybe with all the new players and the new coaches, they would have names and numbers, but they haven't. So the new
It
guys
forces
have
you to
a learning experience not only to learn their peers, but also learn the players.
yeah, it forces you to really get to know the people around you.
Yeah, and I'm pretty good at facial recognition, fortunately, so I haven't had to ask too much. Although I did have to ask who Dukanich was because I didn't recognize him.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I've watched him pitch plenty over the last year or so, but I wouldn't recognize him either. I sympathize with you there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that everybody will get a chance to throw a bullpen before the end of the time. I don't really know. I don't have the schedule yet of what they're going to do, but typically they're there and they do their lifting from 9 to 10, get on the field from basically 10 to 12. So for those who subscribe to the Cardinal Nation, you can read my recaps. I post a lot of photos of what I'm seeing there in camp here in Jupiter, and like I said, I'll be here through the duration. So if you haven't subscribed to the Cardinal Nation, please consider doing so. As I mentioned, every week our prospect guide is for sale. I should be getting the shipment of books tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, at which point everybody who's put their first orders in, I'll get those back turned around via Postal Service media mail. So order the Cardinal Prospect Guide, and if you subscribe, you can get the PDF version for half price, which is a nice deal for those who would like to have it electronically and to carry with them on their mobile device. So with that, Kyle, I will thank you for another week of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. And any closing comments?
No, thank you. I love this. Just one more time, like hearing you're the only person down there with the recaps. Like it's such a valuable subscription for all the prospect people. Like to be able to get those recaps, that's the kind of stuff that I drool over. So thank you for being down there and providing the info.
Well, it was good timing for me. I hadn't, what really confirmed it for me was when all the changes were made in player development. And I decided, listen, if there was a time ever to make the financial commitment to come down here and do it, this is a year to do it. And I got to thank the subscribers. Let's face it, if people didn't pay to subscribe, I couldn't afford to come down here for 2 months. So I thank all of you, and hopefully, you're seeing value in the new content we provide every day.
Well, thank you for it.
All right. And we will talk to you again as we flip the calendar to February, Kyle.
I can't wait to talk to you next week.
All right. So long for now, everybody.